Let's have a look at one of my favorite modifiers, the spring modifier. And for that, let's just use this grid of instances with a spherical falloff on it. And what I want to do first is I want to drop down a randomize, wire this in here, highlight it, and randomize the position. Maybe scale it up a bit to 15, so we see those instances are being moved around. Now, let's animate those by scaling up my spherical falloff. So highlight this, dial back the scale to say 0.1, like so. Set a keyframe by alt-clicking on this. Go to frame 12, set the scale to 10, alt-click on this one again to set another keyframe, and now shift-click in here to open up the animation editor, highlight the F-curve, and set it to be linear, like so. Let's hit play to see what we just created. Beautiful. And when I highlight the mobs randomize, the resulting animation will look like this. Not much and a bit jaggy, so how are we gonna add a bit more detail or more liveliness to this? Well, we have this neat thing called the spring modifier. Let's append that, highlight it, and in here, only check position. And let's hit play. And you can see this wiggly motion, which comes from this spring simulation that we built here, which we can dial in with those parameters here. So let's give this a bit more mass. We can see now it wiggles a bit slower. We can counteract this by increasing the spring constant, which kind of is the strength of the springs that we're simulating. And finally, the damping that drives how strongly this wiggling motion will disappear. So a smaller damping coefficient will result in a wiggly motion that appears quicker. So let's set this to a really low value. And you can see almost no wiggly motion, just a very damped movement to their position. And with a higher value that gets closer to 1, 0.98, we can see it wiggles around a lot. And the damping coefficient in general should be in the value range of 0 to 1, while the mass and the spring constant can also have values above 1. Let's stop that. And down here you can set up which parameters you want to have the springy effect on. You can also have the orientation, behave with a spring-like behavior with rotation, the scale, and you can also have a spring-like behavior on the fall-off. To demonstrate that, let's just remove the mobs randomize here, uncheck position, check fall-off. So we now have only this animated fall-off coming in through a shape fall-off. So let's hit play on that. Nothing special here. But when we highlight the spring modifier, we can see this pulsating motion of our fall-off. So that's been fed through this whole spring solver. However, a more practical example just uses a position and has this mobs randomize in between. So that's what we built previously. And finally, in the spring modifier, in the solver settings, what you can do if you tweak some parameter and your simulation for some reason is not updating, you can reset the simulation. And also, if you want to start with your spring simulation at another frame, you can dial in the start frame here. And if for some reason you want to have substeps in your simulation, you can also set this up here. So that's the spring modifier.